If you believe that virtue alone secures peace, then I invite you to open your eyes. For history, written in blood and betrayal, teaches us otherwise. Princes fall not for lack of kindness, but for lack of ruthlessness when it is most needed. Calculated cruelty, administered swiftly and without hesitation, can preserve kingdoms, silence rebellion, and command loyalty through fear when love is no longer sufficient. This is not conjecture. This is the cold truth of power. Today, I will reveal the deeper mechanics behind what I call useful cruelty, why it must be deliberate, not constant, why its timing matters more than its scale, and why the illusion of mercy often requires a stage built on suffering. These are lessons drawn not from moral tales, but from the real world. Rome, Florence, and every palace that ever tasted steel behind silk. And let me be clear, these strategies are not for the faint-hearted, but if you seek power, if you wish to understand what it takes to govern, survive, or even outlast your enemies, then listen closely. Stay until the end, because I will reveal the one mistake rulers make that turns necessary cruelty into their downfall. And if these teachings stir something in you, ambition perhaps, then subscribe to our channel. For what I unveil here, few dare say aloud. Close your eyes for a moment and picture the leaders you most admire, those figures from history whose names echo through time, whose legacies endure beyond their mortal spans. Now look closer, not at the sanitized versions presented in common histories, but at the true nature of their rule. What do you see? Behind every great achievement, behind every lasting peace, lies a foundation built on fear. You have been taught since childhood that fear is something to be avoided, that it corrupts and destroys. But this is a child's understanding of a leader's most potent tool. Fear, when wielded with precision, with purpose, with understanding, fear becomes virtue itself. Imagine standing before a fractious council, a divided board, a rebellious workforce. On your right stands an advisor who counsels kindness, who speaks of inspiration and motivation. On your left stands another who understands deeper truths, who knows that respect born of fear lasts longer than admiration born of kindness. Which advisor will you heed? Your choice in this moment determines not just your fate, but the fate of all who depend upon your strength. Let me share with you a truth I learned in the courts of Florence, watching the Medici maintain their grip on power. When they ruled through love alone, their position was forever precarious. But when they mastered the art of fear, not crude terror, but the sophisticated cultivation of respect through strength, their power became absolute. Consider the simple mathematics of human nature. Love obligates the lover, but fear compels the fearful. When you are loved, you must constantly maintain that love through gifts, through favors, through endless accommodation of others' desires. But when you are feared with reason, feared with purpose, others maintain their own good behavior. They check themselves, they question their own actions rather than questioning yours. I see you recoil at these words. Perhaps you think yourself above such methods. Perhaps you believe your leadership can rest solely on inspiration, on positive reinforcement, on the better angels of human nature. If so, I invite you to examine history more closely. Find me a lasting peace that wasn't maintained by the credible threat of force. Show me an enduring order that wasn't preserved by the understood consequences of disorder. The virtue of fear lies in its efficiency. Love must be earned again and every day, with ever-increasing gestures, with constant attention. Fear, properly instilled, maintains itself. Like a well-crafted clock, it continues ticking without your constant intervention. This is not cruelty. This is efficiency. This is not tyranny. This is understanding. But let me be clear. I speak not of terror, not of arbitrary violence that spawns only hatred and rebellion. The fear I teach you to cultivate is the fear of consequences, the fear of losing position, the fear of falling from grace. It is the same fear that keeps civil society functioning, that maintains order in any hierarchy, that prevents chaos from overwhelming civilization itself. Think of a parent who never disciplines, who relies solely on love and positive reinforcement. What becomes of the child? Now think of a parent who balances love with firm boundaries, who ensures their child understands the consequences of misbehavior. Which child is better prepared for the world? Which family knows more peace? The same principles apply to leadership at every level. Your desire to be loved, to be admired, to be praised, these are weaknesses that your enemies will exploit. But your capacity to be feared, feared justly, feared rationally, this is strength that your enemies must respect. I have watched leaders destroy themselves and their domains through excessive kindness. I have seen mercy become the midwife of mayhem. These leaders believed themselves virtuous, believed themselves better than the harsh realities of power. Their domains now lie in ruins, their people scattered, their dreams of benevolent rule trampled under the feet of those who better understood the virtue of fear. Here is wisdom, earned through observation. Fear and respect are twins in the game of power. One cannot exist for long without the other. Those who fear you without respecting you will eventually destroy you. Those who respect you without fearing you will eventually betray you. But those who fear your strength while respecting your judgment, they become the foundation of lasting power. You must understand, the choice is not between being feared or being ineffective. The choice is between understanding fear as the tool it is or pretending that human nature is other than what we know it to be. Every order, every peace, every functioning hierarchy operates on this principle, whether it admits it or not. Let me share a secret known to every successful ruler, every effective leader, every person who has maintained power long enough to use it wisely. The cultivation of fear, rational, purposeful, measured fear, is not merely effective, it is moral. It is moral because it prevents the greater evils that arise from weak leadership. It is moral because it creates order from chaos, stability from uncertainty, peace from conflict. When you understand this, when you internalize this truth, you will find yourself freed from the endless cycle of seeking approval, of trying to win love that can never be truly secured. You will instead focus on earning respect through strength, on maintaining order through clear consequences, on building something lasting through clear understanding of human nature. The virtue of fear, properly understood, becomes your greatest ally in the art of leadership. It simplifies decisions, clarifies relationships, and creates the very stability that allows for true progress. This is the first lesson, the foundation upon which all other lessons will build. Remember, those who refuse to instill fear when necessary become responsible for the chaos that follows. Those who reject this tool out of misplaced moral considerations become accomplices to the disorder they could have prevented. True virtue lies not in avoiding the necessary, but in understanding it, mastering it, and using it to create the order that all civilization requires. This is your first step toward true understanding of power. In the lessons that follow, I will show you precisely how to cultivate this fear, how to maintain it, and most importantly, how to use it in service of your greater goals. But first, you must embrace this fundamental truth. Fear, properly understood and properly applied, is not the opposite of good leadership, it is its foundation. Before you can master the art of power, you must first understand the material with which you work. Just as a sculptor must know the properties of marble, a leader must understand the true nature of mankind, not as philosophers wish it to be, not as priests preach it should be, but as history and experience prove it is. Let me paint for you a portrait of human nature, not in flattering lights or gentle shadows, but in the harsh clarity of truth. Men are fickle, ungrateful, false, cowardly, and covetous. When you serve their needs, they are entirely yours, offering their blood, their property, their lives, and their children. But this devotion lasts only so long as necessity seems distant. When you need them, they turn away. You may protest, you may point to examples of loyalty, of sacrifice, of noble behavior, but I ask you to look deeper. Look at what happens when true hardship strikes, when real sacrifice is demanded, when personal interest conflicts with proclaimed loyalty. This is when you see the truth of human nature revealed. I have witnessed this pattern repeat itself through decades of observation. In Florence, I watched as the most trusted advisors betrayed their patrons the moment fortune turned. In Rome, I saw how quickly the mob could turn from adoration to violence. In every court, in every council, in every assembly, the same truth emerges. Humans act not from principle, but from self-interest. Think of your own experience. Remember those moments when you counted on others' gratitude only to find it evaporated at the first test. Recall those times when you trusted in friendship, only to discover that friendship withered when interests diverged. These are not exceptions to human nature. They are its purest expressions. The leader who builds strategy on the assumption of human virtue builds on quicksand. Every plan that relies on sustained loyalty, on remembered gratitude, on maintained principle, every such plan carries within it the seeds of its own destruction. This is not pessimism. This is preparation. Consider the mathematics of betrayal. Men will endure hardship under a leader they fear more readily than they will maintain loyalty to one they love. Why? Because fear speaks to their instinct for self-preservation, while love speaks only to their capacity for gratitude. And self-preservation will always trump gratitude when the moment of choice arrives. You must understand, people will break promises. They will betray trust. They will abandon principles, not because they are evil, but because they are human. The wise leader plans for this reality rather than wishing for a different one. Let me share with you a scene I witnessed in my youth. A powerful patron had spent years cultivating loyalty through generosity, through kindness, through attention to his followers' needs. He believed he had built unshakable bonds. Then came a crisis, a moment when his position was threatened. Those same followers he had nurtured, how quickly they calculated their interests, how swiftly they found reasons to stand aside. This is the foundation upon which you must build your strategy. Assume betrayal. Plan for disloyalty. Expect envy and self-interest to overcome every bond you think you've created, not because you're cynical, but because you're wise. The leader who understands this gains immense power from that understanding. When you expect self-interest to guide actions, you can predict behavior. When you assume loyalty will bend before necessity, you can plan accordingly. When you know that fear speaks louder than love, you can act effectively. I see in your eyes the resistance to these truths. Perhaps you think your followers are different. Perhaps you believe your leadership can transcend these realities of human nature. Let me be clear. This belief itself is a weakness your enemies will exploit. Think of it this way. A general who plans for the enemy's best behavior will be destroyed by their worst. A leader who counts on human virtue will be undone by human nature. Your task is not to wish for better material, but to work skillfully with the material you have. This understanding must infuse every aspect of your strategy. When you make allies, assume they will break faith when it profits them. When you show mercy, know it will be forgotten when circumstances change. When you build support, understand it will crumble when tested by adversity. But this knowledge need not make you cruel. Rather, it should make you wise. Understanding. Human nature allows you to build systems that work with it rather than against it. You can create structures where self-interest aligns with loyalty, where personal benefit coincides with collective good. The truly skilled leader uses this understanding to create stability from instability, order from chaos. By accepting human nature as it is, not as we wish it to be, you gain the power to channel it, to shape it, to use it for your purposes. Remember, every great leader in history understood these truths, whether they spoke them aloud or not. Every lasting structure of power was built on this foundation. whether its builders admitted it or not. Every successful strategy accounts for human nature's unchanging realities. In the lessons that follow, I will show you how to use this understanding, how to build strategies that work with human nature rather than against it. But first, you must accept this fundamental truth. Men are not what they claim to be, not what they wish to be, but what necessity makes them be. This is your foundation. Build upon it wisely. Here we arrive at perhaps my most famous teaching, one that has echoed through centuries. It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. But understand, this is not merely a preference, not simply a choice of styles. This is a fundamental truth about power, proven time and again by history. Imagine yourself at the apex of power. Your subjects smile, they bow, they proclaim their love and loyalty. These same smiling faces may tomorrow bare teeth. These same bowing heads may tomorrow rise in rebellion. These same loyal subjects may tomorrow serve your enemies. Love is fickle. Fear endures. Let me share with you a truth I learned watching the great families of Florence rise and fall. Those who built their power on love lived in constant anxiety, forever feeding the beast of public affection with gifts, concessions, and displays of generosity. But those who built their power on fear, they slept soundly, knowing that self-preservation is a more reliable master than gratitude. Consider the simple logic. Love creates an obligation in the giver, while fear creates an obligation in the receiver. When you make yourself loved, you must constantly prove worthy of that love. When you make yourself feared, others must constantly prove themselves worthy of your mercy. I see you wrestling with this concept. Perhaps you think it too harsh, too cynical, but look at your own experience. Think of those times when you relied on others' love, their gratitude, their sense of obligation. How often were you disappointed? Now think of those times when others knew with certainty that failure would bring consequences. How much more reliable was their behavior? The mathematics of human nature proves this truth. Love is purchased at a price you must continually pay. Fear, once properly instilled, maintains itself. Love requires constant attention, constant demonstration, constant renewal. Fear, properly managed, works even in your absence. But understand, I speak not of terror, not of the kind of fear that breeds hatred and desperation. That is the tool of amateurs, of tyrants who mistake cruelty for power. The fear I teach you to cultivate is the fear of losing position, of losing favor, of facing consequences. It is the same fear that keeps civil society functioning, that maintains order in any hierarchy. Let me paint you a scene I witnessed. Two rulers, each facing rebellion. The first had spent years making himself loved, showering his people with gifts and favors. When crisis came, they calculated their interests anew and abandoned him. The second had built his rule on respected strength and clear consequences. When crisis came, potential rebels calculated the price of failure and stayed their hands. This is not theory. This is not philosophy. This is practical wisdom bought with the coin of observation. Every leader who has maintained power long enough to use it wisely has understood this truth whether they spoke it aloud or not. You may think you can have both love and fear. And yes, this would be ideal. But when circumstances force a choice, and they will force a choice, you must understand which master serves you better. Love connects you to others' emotions. Fear connects you to their survival instincts. Which do you think proves more reliable? Consider the parent who seeks only to be loved by their child. Consider the commander who wishes only to be loved by their troops. Consider the ruler who desires only to be loved by their subjects. In each case, the desire for love undermines the very authority needed to protect and guide those under their care. The wise leader understands being feared is not about being cruel. It is about being consistent, about ensuring that actions have consequences, about maintaining the order that benefits all. This is not heartless. This is responsibility embraced fully. Let me be clear about the kind of fear I advocate. It is not the fear of arbitrary cruelty. It is not the fear of unpredictable violence. It is the clear understanding that actions have consequences, that disloyalty carries a price, that order will be maintained through strength when necessary. Think of the most effective organizations you know. Look past their public relations, past their stated values, past their proclaimed culture. Look at how they actually maintain order. You will find that behind every smile, behind every motivation, speech, behind every reward system, lies the clear understanding of consequences. This is the art you must master. Creating fear that does not breed hatred, cultivating respect that carries within it the seed of caution, building a reputation that makes others think carefully before crossing you. The leader who masters this art gains something precious: peace, not the fragile peace that must be constantly maintained through gifts and concessions, but the lasting peace that comes from clear understanding of boundaries and consequences. Remember, those who wish to be loved must make themselves dependent on others' emotions. Those who establish themselves as feared make others dependent on their judgment. Which position carries more strength? Which position offers more stability? This then is your choice, though in truth circumstances will often make it for you. Will you be loved and forever anxious about maintaining that love? Or will you be feared and able to focus on maintaining the order that benefits all? In the lessons that follow, I will show you precisely how to cultivate the right kind of fear, how to maintain it without falling into hatred, how to use it to create the stability that all civilization requires. But first, you must embrace this truth. In the realm of power, fear is not the opposite of good leadership. It is often its foundation. Now we come to the most delicate art in the arsenal of power, the precise application of cruelty, not random acts of violence, not emotional outbursts of rage, but calculated measures taken with surgical precision and perfect timing. This is where leaders either master power or are mastered by their own weakness. Picture yourself faced with a choice. A subordinate has betrayed you, but in a small way, a test of boundaries perhaps, or a minor act of defiance. Do you respond with immediate force, making an example that will echo through your entire organization? Or do you show mercy, hoping that kindness will breed loyalty? This is the calculus of cruelty, and your answer will determine your fate. Let me share with you the story of Cesare Borgia, whom I studied closely. When he took control of the Romagna, he found it in chaos, torn apart by weak leadership and unchecked violence. His response? He appointed a cruel but effective minister, Ramiro de Orco, to restore order through harsh measures. Once order was restored, he had Ramiro executed and displayed in the public square, thus achieving two aims. The people feared his power, but loved him for protecting them from his minister's cruelty. This is the mathematics of necessary violence. Cruelty must be swift, decisive, and memorable. It must serve a clear purpose, and most importantly, it must be done in such a way that its benefits outlive its execution. Borgia understood what so many leaders fail to grasp, that cruelty, properly applied, can be more merciful than weakness. Consider the opposite approach. Leaders who try to maintain power through constant small cruelties, through daily demonstrations of force, through endless examples of their capability for violence. These leaders invariably fall, destroyed by the hatred they accumulate, undermined by the very fear they thought would protect them. The wisdom lies in understanding this truth. Cruelty must be economical. Like a surgeon's knife, it should cut once, cleanly, and with purpose. Those who hack away with daily small cuts eventually find themselves bleeding from 1,000 wounds of resentment. I have watched rulers destroy themselves through misunderstanding this principle. Some refused to act cruelly when necessity demanded it, allowing small rebellions to grow into revolutions. Others embraced cruelty too freely, turning potential allies into certain enemies. The art lies in knowing not just how, but when Think of it this way. A single act of decisive cruelty, properly timed and perfectly executed, can prevent years of scattered violence. A clear demonstration of strength, made at the right moment, can establish an order that benefits all. This is not mere theory. This is the lesson of history. Let me give you the formula that history has proven true. Cruelty must be swift, so that its bitterness is swallowed in a single gulp rather than tasted drop by drop. It must be decisive so that none can doubt either your will or your capability. And it must be rare enough to be memorable, but frequent enough to be credible. The timing of cruelty is as crucial as its application. Act too soon, and you appear paranoid. Act too late, and you appear weak. The perfect moment comes when the example you make will be understood by all, when the consequences you deliver will echo in the minds of others who might consider similar transgressions. Consider the example of Agathocles of Syracuse, who rose from nothing to become king. His cruelty was perfectly timed, executed when his power was fresh, when examples were needed, when memories would be longest. But once established, he ruled. With measure, understanding that constant cruelty undermines the very authority it seeks to reinforce. This is the paradox you must understand. The most effective cruelty is that which makes future cruelty unnecessary. Every act of force should create a longer period of peace. Every example made should prevent the need for future examples. This is not kindness masquerading as cruelty. This is cruelty serving the cause of order. You may find yourself recoiling from these truths. Perhaps you think there must be another way, a path to power that doesn't require such calculations. But look at history. Look at the present. Show me a lasting peace that wasn't purchased with decisive action. Show me an enduring order that wasn't established through clear demonstration of strength. The true art lies in making your cruelty appear both necessary and just. When you must act, do so in a way that allows others to understand the logic, even as they fear the consequences. Your reputation should not be that of one who enjoys cruelty, but of one who applies it when necessity demands. Remember this crucial distinction. Cruelty should never appear personal. It should always serve a greater purpose, should always be directed toward creating stability, toward establishing order. The moment your cruelty appears to spring from emotion rather than calculation, you have already failed. Let me share a final truth about the calculus of cruelty. Those who master it sleep soundly, while those who refuse to learn it lie awake, watching their power slip away through 1,000 small rebellions, through countless tests of their resolve, through endless challenges to their authority. In the lessons that follow, I will show you precisely when and how to apply these principles, how to make your necessary cruelties serve the cause of lasting peace. But first, you must accept this truth. In the realm of power, properly calculated cruelty is often the most merciful course of action. In all matters of power, timing is not merely important, it is everything. I have watched countless leaders fall not because their actions were wrong, but because their timing was poor. A perfectly calculated strike, delivered too late, becomes weakness. Mercy granted too early becomes invitation to revolt. Let us explore this decisive element that separates masters of power from its servants. Imagine a newly appointed leader facing their first challenge to authority. The natural instinct is to wait, to observe, to gather more information. But in that hesitation lies the seed of destruction. I have seen it countless times in Florence. New rulers believing they had time to establish themselves, only to find that time itself had become their enemy. Consider this truth I learned watching the Medici rise and fall. The beginning of your rule is when your enemies are at their weakest, when their networks are disrupted, when their loyalties are uncertain. This is when you must strike, not after. They have rebuilt their strength not after they have tested your resolve, but immediately while confusion still reigns. Let me share with you a scene I witnessed. A new governor recently appointed discovered a plot against him. His advisors counseled patience, suggested investigation, recommended careful consideration. By the time he finally acted, the conspiracy had grown roots too deep to fully extract. His hesitation transformed a simple task into an impossible one. This is the mathematics of timing. Every moment of delay multiplies your enemy's opportunities. Every hesitation compounds the forces aligned against you. The wise leader understands that time is never neutral. It either serves you or serves your opponents. Think of it this way. When you first take power, expectations are uncertain. People watch, wait, wonder what kind of leader you will be. This uncertainty is your ally, but only if you use it. Show strength too late, and you will be seen as responding to pressure. Show it immediately, and you will be seen as setting the terms. I have observed this pattern repeat itself throughout history. New leaders who act decisively in their first days establish patterns that last years. Those who hesitate, who try to build consensus, who seek to be understood before being feared, they spend their entire reign fighting battles that could have been won in the first week. The timing of cruelty is particularly crucial. When you must be cruel early. Let all your harsh acts be done at once in the beginning when they can be justified by the necessities of establishing order. This way, each day that follows can appear more generous than the last, rather than increasingly harsh. Consider the wisdom of ancient Rome. New consuls would make their most severe decisions immediately upon taking office. They understood that early harshness, properly timed, creates the space for later clemency, but harshness that comes later appears weak, reactive, born of fear rather than strength. You must understand, timing transforms the meaning of actions. The same decision that projects strength today may reveal weakness tomorrow. The mercy that appears generous in your first hour may be seen as capitulation in your 10th. This is not about the action itself. It is about the moment you choose to take it. Let me give you a principle I've seen proven time and again. All necessary harshness should be front-loaded. All benefits should be dispensed gradually. This creates a narrative of increasing benevolence rather than increasing severity. People will remember your trajectory more than your individual actions. Think of your own experience. When have you waited too long to address a challenge? When have you allowed small problems to grow into large ones through hesitation? When have you missed the perfect moment to establish your authority? These are not just mistakes. They are failures to understand the role of timing in power. The truly skilled leader uses timing to make necessity appear as choice. When you must do something harsh, do it before it becomes obviously necessary. When you must show strength, show it before it is desperately needed. This way you appear to be acting from position of control rather than reaction. Remember this crucial truth. In matters of power, tomorrow is always more difficult than today. The problems you can solve with a word today may require force tomorrow. The rebellion you can crush with a gesture now may demand blood later. Time is never your friend when it comes to necessary action. I have seen leaders destroy themselves through misunderstanding this principle. They wait for perfect information, for ideal conditions, for clear justification. But in power, such moments rarely come. The perfect time to act is usually when action is still unexpected, when your moves can still surprise. Here is wisdom earned through observation. The best time to establish your reputation is before others have decided what it should be. The best time to show your strength is before it is tested. The best time to create fear is before you desperately need it. Let me be clear about what this means for you. When you see a threat, do not wait for it to mature. When you identify an enemy, do not wait for them to strengthen. When you know action will be necessary, do not delay in hopes that necessity will pass. This is not mere urgency, this is understanding. Every moment you wait to do what must be done is a moment your enemies use to prepare against you. Every delay in necessary action is an opportunity granted to those who would see you fall. Remember, timing is not just about when you act, it is about the story your timing tells. Act too late, and you tell a story of weakness. Act too early, and you tell a story of paranoia. But act at precisely the right moment, and you tell a story of inevitable power, of natural authority, of rightful command. In the lessons that follow, I will show you exactly how to recognize these crucial moments, how to seize them, how to use them to establish the kind of power that endures. But first, you must accept this truth. In the game of power, timing is not just an advantage, it is the advantage that makes all others possible. Let us now strip away perhaps the most dangerous illusion in the art of leadership, the myth of moral purity. This pleasant fiction has destroyed more rulers, undermined more states, and caused more suffering than any external enemy. Today I will show you why moral purity is a luxury the powerful cannot afford, and why pretending otherwise leads to disaster. Imagine yourself faced with this choice. Your enemies have gathered against you, hidden behind the shield of legitimate grievances. You can destroy them now decisively, but doing so requires actions that would appear unjust. Or you can maintain your moral reputation while watching them grow stronger. This is not a philosophical exercise. This is the reality of power. Let me share what I witnessed in the courts of Italy. Leaders who clung to moral purity found themselves outmaneuvered by those who understood deeper truths. While the virtuous ruler hesitated, bound by principles, their less constrained opponents acted. While the moral leader sought justice, their enemies sought advantage. The end was always the same. Virtue gave way to necessity, but too late to save those who clung to it too long. Consider this truth that history teaches us. Every great leader who maintained power long enough to use it wisely learned to wear virtue like a cloak, to be displayed in public but removed when necessity demanded action. This is not cynicism. This is survival. This is not corruption. This is understanding. You may protest. You may believe that true virtue can overcome all obstacles. But I ask you to look deeper. Show me a leader who maintained power through pure virtue, and I will show you a leader who had others do their necessary evils for them. Show me a state preserved by morality alone, and I will show you the hidden forces of power that actually maintained it. Think of your own experience. When have your highest principles come into direct conflict with necessity? When has your moral code demanded one action, while survival required another? These are not moments of weakness. These are moments of truth, when reality strips away comfortable illusions. The mathematics of power proves this truth. Those who bind themselves to strict moral codes in leadership place themselves at the mercy of those who do not. While the virtuous leader plays by rules, their enemies play to win. While the moral ruler seeks justice, their opponents seek advantage. Let me be clear. I do not advocate for abandoning morality entirely. Rather, I teach you to understand its proper place in the hierarchy of necessity. Virtue should be like a fine garment, worn when appropriate, set aside when circumstances demand more practical attire. I have watched rulers destroy themselves through excessive devotion to moral appearance. They sacrificed real power on the altar of perceived virtue. They chose seeming good over effective action, and in doing so, they not only destroyed themselves, but abandoned their responsibilities to those who depended upon their strength. Consider this paradox. Often, maintaining the appearance of virtue requires more vicious acts than simply accepting the necessity of occasional harsh action. The leader who refuses to act decisively when required often finds themselves forced into greater cruelties later, when their position has weakened and their enemies have multiplied. The wise leader understands there is a deeper morality in maintaining order, in preserving stability, in preventing the chaos that comes from weak leadership. Sometimes the most moral action is one that appears on its surface to violate conventional morality. Think of it this way. A parent who never disciplines their child, who places the appearance of kindness above the necessity of guidance, does more harm than one who acts firmly when required. The same principle applies to leadership at every level. Let me share a truth learned through centuries of observation. The most effective leaders are those who understand how to maintain the appearance of virtue while keeping themselves free to act according to necessity. They know when to display mercy and when to exact punishment. They understand that timing often matters more than the action itself. You must grasp this essential principle. The appearance of virtue is often more important than virtue itself. Not because virtue is worthless, but because the appearance of virtue creates the stability that allows for real moral action when possible. Remember, those who try to lead through pure virtue often end up causing more harm than those who understand the necessity of occasional harsh action. Their weakness invites aggression. Their hesitation breeds chaos. Their moral purity becomes the source of suffering for those they meant to protect. This, then, is the deeper truth about moral leadership. The most moral act is often maintaining the power necessary to create stability, to prevent greater evils, to establish the order that allows for genuine virtue to flourish. In the lessons that follow, I will show you precisely how to balance these competing demands, how to maintain the appearance of virtue while keeping yourself free to act according to necessity. But first, you must accept this truth. In the realm of power, moral purity is often the most dangerous luxury of all. Let us now address a dangerous delusion that has seduced many would-be leaders: the belief that soft power, persuasion, influence, and diplomatic maneuvering can replace the firm foundation of real strength. This pleasant fiction has led countless rulers to their downfall, believing they could negotiate what must be commanded, persuade what must be compelled. Picture yourself at a negotiating table, armed only with words and goodwill. Across from you sits an opponent who smiles and speaks of cooperation while maintaining an army at your borders. This is not a hypothetical. This is the reality faced by every leader who believes soft power alone can secure their position. I have watched rulers destroy themselves through excessive faith in diplomacy. In Florence, I saw leaders try to negotiate their way out of situations that demanded decisive action. They spoke of influence while their enemies gathered strength. They sought compromise while their opponents prepared for conquest. Their end was always the same. They lost everything they tried to preserve through gentle means. Let me share a truth learned through bitter observation. Diplomacy without the credible threat of force is like a knife without a blade. It makes the motions of cutting without achieving any effect. Every successful negotiation in history has been backed by the implicit understanding of consequences for failure. Consider this mathematics of power. When you rely solely on soft power, you make yourself dependent on others' willingness to be influenced. When you maintain hard power, you depend only on your own strength and resolve. Which position carries more security? Which foundation stands firmer? You may protest, pointing to examples of diplomatic triumphs, of conflicts resolved through negotiation rather than force. But look deeper. Behind every successful peace treaty lies the shadow of power. Behind every diplomatic agreement stands the unspoken threat of consequences. Think of your own experience. When have you seen true change achieved through persuasion? Alone? When has influence without authority created lasting results? The moments you recall as triumphs of soft power were likely backed by harder realities that remained unspoken but understood. The truly skilled leader understands. Soft power is a tool, not a foundation. It is the velvet glove that can, at times, disguise the iron fist. But without that iron fist, without the capability and willingness to act decisively, all the diplomatic skill in the world amounts to nothing more than pleasing words. I have seen this pattern repeat itself throughout history. States that relied too heavily on diplomacy found themselves at the mercy of those who maintained strength. Leaders who trusted in influence discovered too late that influence flows from power, not the other way around. Let me be clear, I do not advocate abandoning diplomacy entirely. Rather, I teach you to understand its proper place in the hierarchy of power. Negotiation is useful, but only when backed by strength. Influence has value, but only when supported by capability. Consider this paradox. The most effective diplomacy comes from those known to be capable of decisive action. Your words carry more weight when your strength is understood. Your influence extends further when others know the cost of defying you. The wise leader uses soft power like a seasoned hunter uses bait, not as the primary means of achieving goals, but as one tool among many, always backed by the capability for decisive action. They understand that diplomatic overtures without strength behind them are merely prayers offered to deaf gods. Think of it this way. Every successful parent knows that reasoning with a child works best when the child understands there are consequences. For defiance, every effective teacher knows their influence depends on their authority. Why should leadership be different? Let me share a principle I've seen proven time and again. The appearance of preferring diplomatic solutions can be useful, but the capability for decisive action must never be in doubt. Your enemies should believe you prefer peace while knowing you are prepared for war. You must understand, soft power is not a replacement for strength. It is a way of applying strength efficiently. The most effective leaders use diplomacy not because they lack other options, but because they have so many options that diplomacy becomes a choice rather than a necessity. Remember, those who rely solely on soft power often end up discovering its limitations at the worst possible moment. When persuasion fails, when influence proves insufficient, when diplomatic overtures are met with contempt, these are the moments when real power matters most. This, then, is the deeper truth about soft power. It is most effective when it is least needed. Your diplomatic efforts carry the most weight when your strength is unquestioned. Your influence extends furthest when others know the consequences of rejecting it. In the lessons that follow, I will show you precisely how to balance these elements, how to use soft power as a tool while maintaining the hard capabilities that give it meaning. But first, you must accept this truth. In the realm of power, soft methods are useful servants but dangerous masters. Now we come to a principle that separates those who truly understand power from those who merely play at it. When you take control, the old order must not merely be changed, it must be destroyed. This is not cruelty for its own sake. This is the mathematics of survival, the calculus of lasting change. Imagine yourself having just gained power in any domain, a company, an organization, a state. The remnants of the old regime surround you, advisors who served your predecessor, systems built for different purposes, loyalties tied to former ways. Every one of these is not merely an inconvenience, it is an existential threat to your rule. Let me share what I witnessed in the courts of Italy. New rulers who tried to preserve existing structures, who attempted to work within established systems, who sought to maintain old loyalties. They all fell, some quickly, some slowly, but their end was inevitable from the moment they chose preservation over transformation. Consider this truth that history teaches repeatedly. Those who inherit power but leave the old order intact inherit also the seeds of their own destruction. Every preserved institution becomes a potential weapon against you. Every maintained loyalty becomes a possible point of betrayal. You may protest, arguing for the value of experience, the importance of continuity, the wisdom of gradual change. But I ask you to look deeper. Show me a successful transformation that left the old order intact. Show me a new regime that thrived while preserving its predecessor's structure. Think of your own experience. When have you tried to create change while maintaining existing systems? When have you attempted to lead while leaving old hierarchies in place? The frustration you felt in those moments was not failure. It was reality teaching you this essential truth. The mathematics of power proves this principle. Every remnant of the old order carries within it the loyalty, the methods, the very purpose of what you must replace. Like a building erected on old foundations, your new structure remains vulnerable to ancient weaknesses. Let me be clear. This destruction I speak of need not always be literal. Sometimes it means complete reorganization. Sometimes it means fundamental restructuring. But always, it means ensuring that what was can never return. I have watched leaders destroy themselves through half measures in this regard. They removed some advisors but kept others. They changed some systems but preserved others. They altered the appearance while maintaining the essence. Each compromise became a vulnerability, each preservation a future threat. Consider this paradox. The most stable new order is often built on the most complete destruction of the old. Those who transform everything at once face resistance but brief chaos. Those who change things gradually face constant resistance and perpetual instability. The wise leader understands. When taking power, your first task is not to build, but to clear the ground for building. Every structure you inherit is a potential fortress for your enemies. Every tradition you maintain is a rallying point for resistance. Think of it this way. A gardener who wishes to create a new landscape must first clear the ground of old growth. A builder who wants to create a new structure must first remove the old one. Why should the architecture of power be different? Let me share a principle I've seen proven time and again. The first months of your rule determine its entire character. If you show willingness to break completely with the past, you demonstrate strength that discourages future resistance. If you compromise, you invite endless challenges, you must understand. This is not about blind destruction. This is about creating the space and freedom to build something new. Every piece of the old order you preserve becomes a constraint on your ability to create what must be. Remember, those who try to blend old and new often end up with the weaknesses of both and the strengths of neither. The old order's supporters see you as a usurper, while potential allies doubt your commitment to real change. Here is wisdom earned through observation. When you take power, you have a brief window during which radical change is expected and accepted. Miss this window, and every subsequent change becomes harder, every necessary transformation more costly. The truly skilled leader uses this principle not just to destroy, but to create impossibility of return. They understand that it's not enough to remove the old order. You must make its restoration unthinkable. This is not just about changing leadership, it's about changing the very foundation upon which leadership rests. Consider the most successful transformations in history. They didn't just change who held power, they changed the very nature of power itself. They didn't just replace leaders, they replaced the system that produced those leaders. You must grasp this essential truth. Half measures in destroying the old order are more dangerous than no measures at all. Better to leave everything intact than to create a wounded system that will fight for survival with the strength of desperation. In the lessons that follow, I will show you precisely how to identify what must be destroyed, how to eliminate it efficiently, and how to ensure it cannot return. But first you must accept this truth. In the realm of power, preservation is often more dangerous than destruction. Now we arrive at perhaps the most subtle art in the maintenance of power, sustaining fear without breeding hatred. Like a master poisoner who understands the exact measure between efficacy and lethality, you must learn to cultivate fear with scientific precision. Too little, and you invite contempt. Too much, and you seed rebellion. Imagine yourself having established power through decisive action. The initial fear is there, but now comes the true test. How do you maintain that? Fear without becoming a tyrant? How do you keep its edge sharp without drawing blood so often that revolution becomes preferable to submission? Let me share what I observed in the courts of the most successful rulers. They understood that fear, like any tool, becomes dull with overuse. Every demonstration of power reduced its impact. Every act of force diminished its effect. The truly skilled rulers used fear like a rare spice, sparingly but with unforgettable impact. Consider this truth I learned watching the great families maintain their power. Fear is most effective when it lives primarily in the imagination. Let your subjects remember what you are capable of, but rarely force them to witness it. Let them tell stories of your strength, but seldom make them its direct object. You may wonder about the practical application of such subtle terror, but think deeper. When have you been most effectively influenced by fear? Was it not in those moments when consequences were clear but unstated? When power was felt rather than flaunted? The mathematics of fear maintenance proves this principle. Every direct demonstration of power costs you something. Every public act of force creates resistance. But fear maintained through reputation, through occasional reminder, through strategic uncertainty, this compounds its own effect. I have watched rulers destroy themselves through misunderstanding this balance. Some became addicted to displays of force, making their power so common it lost its impact. Others let fear fade entirely, believing their position secure, only to find contempt growing in fear's absence. Let me be clear. The art I teach you is not about constant terrorizing. It is about creating a climate where your strength is always remembered but rarely tested, where your capacity for decisive action is understood so well that action itself becomes unnecessary. Think of it this way. The most effective parent doesn't need to constantly punish. Their children understand boundaries through occasional, memorable enforcement. The most respected teacher doesn't need to repeatedly discipline their students. Remember the rare moments that demonstrated their authority. Consider this paradox. The more frequently you must demonstrate power, the less powerful you appear. True strength lies in maintaining order through the mere possibility of its exercise. Your subjects should fear what you might do more than what you actually do. The wise leader understands. Fear must be maintained through a careful system of reminders and restraint. Like a well-tuned instrument, it must neither be played too often nor allowed to fall silent. The notes you don't play become as important as those you do. Here is wisdom earned through observation. Fear maintained through uncertainty is more effective than fear maintained through cruelty. Let your subjects wonder about your capabilities. Let them question your limits. Let their imaginations work in service of your power. You must grasp this essential principle. The maintenance of fear requires a sophisticated understanding of human psychology. People will tolerate being frightened, but they will plot revenge against being terrorized. They will accept being controlled, but they will rebel against being crushed. Remember, those who rely too heavily on demonstrations of power often find themselves needing to demonstrate it more and more frequently. Each display becomes less effective, requiring ever greater shows of force, until finally the spring breaks. The truly skilled leader uses a variety of tools to maintain fear without constant recourse to force. Surveillance, or the appearance of it, keeps people uncertain about when they are being watched. Strategic unpredictability makes them hesitate before testing boundaries. Occasional, seemingly random demonstrations of power remind them of its reality. Consider the most successful long-term rulers. They created systems where fear became part of the architecture of daily life, not through constant terror, but through the understood consequences of defiance. They made their power felt without making it despised. Let me share a principle I've seen proven repeatedly. The best fear maintenance system is one that appears natural rather than imposed, where consequences seem to flow from the natural order rather than from your direct intervention, where your power appears as inevitable as gravity. You must understand, this is not about making people comfortable with fear. It is about making fear comfortable enough that it doesn't inspire desperate resistance, about maintaining it at precisely the level where it motivates desired behavior without provoking undesired reaction. In the lessons that follow, I will show you exactly how to create and maintain this delicate balance. How to keep fear fresh without making it suffocating, how to remind without terrorizing, how to maintain power without becoming its prisoner. But first you must accept this truth. In the realm of power, fear is like fire, essential for survival, but demanding constant, careful control. Now we must discuss the precise instruments through which power maintains itself, the tools of controlled violence that every effective leader must understand, if not always employ. This is not a lesson in cruelty for its own sake, but in the measured application of force that prevents greater violence through its mere existence. Picture yourself faced with growing dissent within your organization. Whispers of rebellion echo through corridors. Challenges to your authority multiply. At this moment, you must understand not just the necessity of response, but the exact calibration of force required. Too little, and the rebellion grows. Too much, and you create martyrs. Let me share what I witnessed in the courts of the most effective rulers. They maintained elaborate systems of surveillance, not primarily to catch traitors, but to prevent treason through the uncertainty of observation. They cultivated networks of informants not mainly to gather information, but to make everyone wonder who might be reporting their words. Consider this truth I learned watching the great families maintain order. The most effective violence is often that which never needs to be enacted. The mere knowledge of your capabilities, combined with occasional demonstration, creates the compliance that crude force could never achieve. Think of your own experience with power. When have you seen authority most effectively maintained? Was it not in those situations where potential consequences were clearly understood, while actual punishment remained rare? This is the essence of controlled violence, the threat more potent than its execution. The mathematics of power demonstrates this principle. A single perfectly calculated display of force, properly timed and precisely targeted, prevents more rebellion than a dozen random acts of violence. The skilled leader understands that controlled violence is about surgery, not butchery. I have watched rulers destroy themselves through misunderstanding this tool. Some refused to maintain the instruments of force, believing their position secure without them. Others wielded these instruments too freely, transforming tools of control into seeds of their own destruction. Let me be clear. The systems I speak of, surveillance networks, selective enforcement, calibrated response, these are not implements of tyranny, but tools of stability. Like a surgeon's knife, their purpose is not to cause harm, but to prevent greater damage through precise intervention. Think of it this way. Every effective state maintains these capabilities not because they wish to use them, but because their very existence prevents the chaos that would demand their use. This is not paradox. This is the fundamental truth of order. Consider this deeper understanding. The most sophisticated systems of control operate largely unseen. They work through implication rather than demonstration, through possibility rather than actuality. Your subjects should feel the presence of your capabilities without constantly witnessing their exercise. The wise leader understands these tools must be maintained with the same care as any precious instrument. They must be neither neglected nor overused. Their effectiveness lies not in constant employment, but in perfect readiness combined with judicious application. Here is wisdom earned through observation. The appearance of omniscience often proves more valuable than actual surveillance. The belief in your capacity for decisive action frequently matters more than its demonstration. The uncertainty of consequences can be more effective than their certainty. You must grasp this essential principle. The tools of power are most effective when they seem both inevitable and impersonal. Your subjects should view them not as instruments of your will, but as natural forces, as immutable as gravity, as impersonal as weather. Remember, those who lack these tools often find themselves requiring greater violence to maintain order. Those who maintain them properly rarely need to use them at all. This is the paradox of power. The better prepared you are for force, the less often you must employ it. Consider the most effective systems of control in history. They created environments where compliance seemed natural, where defiance appeared futile, not through regular demonstration of force, but through the understood futility of resistance. Let me share a principle I've seen proven repeatedly. The best systems of control are those that operate primarily through prevention rather than punishment. They succeed not by catching and punishing defiance, but by making defiance appear both dangerous and pointless. You must understand, this is not about creating terror. It is about creating certainty. Certainty that challenges to order will be met with precise, measured, effective response. Certainty that while mercy may be possible, escape from consequences is not. In the lessons that follow, I will show you exactly how to construct and maintain these systems, how to create the architecture of control that maintains order through capability rather than cruelty. But first, you must accept this truth. In the realm of power, the most effective violence is that which never needs to be enacted. Now we turn to one of power's most subtle and devastating instruments, mercy. Not mercy born of weakness or compassion, but mercy wielded as a calculated tool of control. In the hands of a skilled ruler, a well-timed pardon can bind loyalty more strongly than any chain, and strategic forgiveness can become deadlier than any sword. Imagine yourself having just crushed a rebellion. The conspirators kneel before you, expecting death, their families already mourning. This moment, this perfect crystallization of your absolute power over life and death. This is when true masters of power understand that mercy can achieve what execution cannot. Let me share what I witnessed in Florence. A ruler, faced with proven traitors, shocked his court by pardoning them publicly, transforming would-be martyrs into living testimonials to his magnanimity. These same pardoned men became his most fervent supporters, not from gratitude, though they proclaimed it loudly, but from the unspoken understanding that their lives were now twice in his possession. Consider this truth that history repeatedly demonstrates. A leader who only punishes is feared but predictable. A leader who combines punishment with unexpected mercy creates an uncertainty that breeds both hope and fear, a far more potent mixture for control. You may think mercy weakens authority, that it invites further transgressions, but look deeper. When has calculated mercy, precisely targeted and perfectly timed, not created obligations that chains could never secure? When has strategic forgiveness, properly staged, not transformed enemies into the most visible proof of your power? The mathematics of mercy proves this principle. Every act of forgiveness creates a debt that can never be fully repaid. Every show of clemency demonstrates a strength so secure it can afford to be generous. Each calculated pardon becomes a monument to your power, proof that you hold not just the power of death, but the greater power of life. I have watched rulers destroy themselves through misunderstanding this tool. Some never showed mercy, making themselves predictable targets of desperate men with nothing to lose. Others dispensed it too freely, making it worthless. The art lies in making mercy rare enough to be precious, but common enough to be hoped for. Let me be clear. The mercy I speak of is not the mercy of the weak, given because they lack the strength to punish. This is the mercy of the strong, given because their power is so secure they can transform enemies into advertisements for their magnanimity. Think of it this way. When you execute an enemy, you create a momentary spectacle. When you pardon one, you create a lasting testament to your power. The dead can only serve as warnings. The pardoned serve as living reminders of your authority and their dependence. Consider this deeper strategy. Every act of mercy should be public, theatrical, memorable. Let all see that you have the power to destroy, but choose to spare. Let them understand that this choice can be made again, or not, depending entirely upon your judgment. The wise leader understands. Mercy must be owned completely. It cannot be demanded or expected. It must flow solely from your will, appearing as grace rather than weakness, as choice rather than necessity. Each act of clemency should reinforce rather than diminish your authority. Here is wisdom earned through observation. The most effective mercy often comes after you have demonstrated your capacity for ruthlessness. Let them see both the steel and the velvet glove. Let them understand that your mercy is choice, not character, that it can be withdrawn as easily as granted. You must grasp this essential principle. Mercy is most powerful when it is most unexpected. Pardon those who expect execution. Spare those who have resigned themselves to punishment. The psychological impact of such reversals creates bonds stronger than any prison. Remember, those who receive calculated mercy become unwitting agents of your power. Their very presence reminds others of your authority. Their gratitude, whether genuine or feigned, becomes part of your arsenal of control. Consider the most successful acts of political mercy in history. They were never simple, but complex demonstrations of power. They transformed potential martyrs into visible trophies, converted enemies into advertisements for submission to authority. Let me share a principle I've seen proven repeatedly. The timing of mercy matters as much as its bestowal. Pardon too soon and you appear weak. Pardon too late and you lose the dramatic impact. The perfect moment comes when all have accepted the inevitability of punishment. You must understand, this is not about forgiveness in any moral sense. This is about using mercy as a tool of power, a weapon that, properly wielded, can achieve what force alone cannot. It is about creating obligations that can never be repaid, dependencies that can never be escaped. In the lessons that follow, I will show you precisely how to use this tool, how to time your mercy, how to stage it for maximum effect, how to ensure it strengthens rather than weakens your position. But first, you must accept this truth. In the realm of power, mercy is not a moral choice, but a tactical weapon. Now we must examine one of power's most essential mechanisms, the strategic use of scapegoats. This is not mere blame shifting. It is the sophisticated art of directing public anger, channeling inevitable dissatisfaction, and protecting the true sources of power through careful misdirection. Picture yourself facing mounting discontent within your domain. The people grow restless, their grievances accumulate, their anger seeks a target. This is the moment when masters of power understand that every system requires a pressure valve, a designated recipient for blame that protects the essential structure of authority. Let me share what I observed in the courts of the most skilled rulers. They maintained not just one scapegoat, but an entire architecture of blame distribution. Lower officials were carefully positioned to absorb public anger, while higher authorities remained insulated, free to pose as potential saviors from the very problems they may have created. Consider this truth that history demonstrates repeatedly. Every successful system of power requires designated lightning rods, figures or groups that can attract and absorb the inevitable bolts of public discontent. Without such targets, that same lightning might strike the tower of authority itself. You may recoil at this concept, thinking it unjust to sacrifice others to protect yourself. But look deeper. When has any system of order not required such mechanisms? When has public anger, left untargeted, not threatened the very stability that benefits all? The mathematics of blame proves this principle. Public discontent, like energy, cannot be destroyed. It can only be transformed or redirected. The skilled leader understands that providing safe channels for this energy protects the broader structure of order. I have watched rulers destroy themselves through misunderstanding this tool. Some try to absorb all blame themselves, making themselves targets for every grievance. Others failed to provide any targets, allowing dissatisfaction to spread unchecked until it consumed everything. Let me be clear. The art I teach you is not simple scapegoating. It is the sophisticated management of public emotion through careful attribution of blame. It is about creating safety valves that protect the essential machinery of power. Think of it this way. Every complex system requires fuses, components designed to fail safely so that more essential elements remain protected. The same principle applies to systems of power. Your scapegoats are your fuses, protecting more vital circuits of authority. Consider this deeper strategy. Your designated receivers of blame must be visible enough to attract attention, but not powerful enough to effectively defend themselves. They must be plausible targets for public anger, but not so central that their downfall threatens the system itself. The wise leader understands scapegoats must be carefully cultivated and maintained. They must appear guilty enough to deserve blame, but not so obviously guilty that the artifice becomes apparent. Their sacrifices must seem justified rather than engineered. Here is wisdom earned through observation. The most effective scapegoats often believe in their own guilt. Choose those who will accept blame, who will internalize responsibility, who will play their part in the drama of public accountability without recognizing it as theater. You must grasp this essential principle. The management of blame is not just about protection. It is about control. Every successfully managed crisis, every carefully directed wave of public anger reinforces your position as the solution rather than the problem. Remember, those who fail to provide suitable targets for public discontent often become targets themselves. Those who neglect to maintain proper channels for blame often find it flowing in unexpected and dangerous directions. Consider the most successful blame management systems in history. They created entire classes of designated fault bearers, bureaucrats, advisors, specific ethnic or social groups who could be blamed for society's ills while leaving the core power structure untouched. Let me share a principle I've seen proven repeatedly. The best scapegoats are those who partially deserve their fate. Mix genuine fault with convenient blame. Let actual misdeeds justify disproportionate punishment. This makes the artifice harder to detect and easier to accept. You must understand, this is not merely about avoiding blame. It is about controlling its flow, directing its course, using its energy to strengthen rather than weaken your position. It is about transforming potential threats into sources of stability. In the lessons that follow, I will show you precisely how to create and maintain these systems, how to choose your scapegoats, how to position them effectively, how to sacrifice them at the right moment for maximum benefit. But first, you must accept this truth. In the realm of power, the management of blame is as crucial as the management of force. Now we must explore perhaps the most potent tool in the arsenal of power, the use of religion and ritual to clothe naked authority in the garments of divine right. This is not about personal faith. It is about understanding how ceremony, tradition, and perceived divine sanction can transform mere power into unquestionable authority. Imagine yourself newly risen to power through force or cunning. Your authority rests on practical foundations: military strength, political maneuvering, economic control. But watch how quickly such mundane power can erode unless it is transformed through ritual into something greater, something seemingly ordained by higher powers. Let me share what I witnessed in Rome, where the Church perfected this art. Every act of power was wrapped in ceremony, every decision clothed in divine purpose, every exercise of authority presented as fulfillment of sacred duty. The genius lay not in the force they wielded, but in making that force appear holy. Consider this truth that history proves repeatedly. People will question a leader's decisions, but they hesitate to challenge God's will. The skilled ruler understands that their authority must appear to flow not from their own strength, but from principles and powers beyond human challenge. You may think such methods beneath you, may believe that practical power should stand on its own merits. But look deeper. When has any lasting authority not wrapped itself in ritual? When has any enduring power not claimed some form of divine or ideological sanction? The mathematics of legitimacy demonstrates this principle. Raw power diminishes with use, but power sanctified by ritual grows stronger with each ceremony. Every tradition you establish, every ritual you create, builds a foundation more durable than any fortress. I have watched rulers destroy themselves through misunderstanding this tool. Some relied purely on force, failing to build the ceremonial framework that would make their power appear natural and right. Others adopted rituals clumsily, making them appear as hollow theatrics rather than profound truths. Let me be clear. The art I teach you is not simple deception. It is the profound understanding that humans require more than practical reasons to accept authority. They need ceremony to transform obedience into devotion, need ritual to make submission feel like participation. Think of it this way. Every successful system of power creates its own religion, whether it calls itself religious or not. The trappings may be ecclesiastical or ideological, traditional or revolutionary, but the function remains the same: to make authority appear both natural and necessary. Consider this deeper strategy. Your rituals must engage all the senses, must create experiences that bypass reason and lodge directly in the deeper parts of the mind. Let your ceremonies overwhelm with sight, sound, smell, and sensation. Let them create memories that feel like truth. The wise leader understands. Religion and ritual serve power best when they appear to serve something higher. Your ceremonies must seem to honor principles beyond yourself, must appear to connect your authority to truths that transcend mere human agency. Here is wisdom earned through observation. The most effective rituals create experiences that participants interpret as profound personal insights. Let them feel they have discovered truth rather than having it imposed upon them. Let them believe. They choose submission freely. You must grasp this essential principle. The appearance of divine or ideological sanction does more than justify your power. It transforms its very nature. Through proper ritual, your decisions cease to be mere human choices and become expressions of higher principle. Remember, those who rule through force alone must constantly demonstrate that force. Those who rule through sanctified authority need only maintain the rituals that remind people of their power's sacred origins. Consider the most successful systems of power in history. They created entire cosmologies to justify their authority, entire worlds of symbol and ceremony that made their rule appear as natural as sunrise, as necessary as seasons. Let me share a principle I've seen proven repeatedly. The most effective rituals are those that create genuine emotion, even in those who engineer them. Let yourself be moved by your ceremonies. Let yourself believe in your traditions. Sincerity, even if arrived at artificially, commands deeper response than pure calculation. You must understand, this is not merely about creating spectacle. It is about constructing a complete experiential framework that makes your authority feel both inevitable and right. It is about building a world in which your power appears not as imposition, but as natural law. Think of how the greatest churches maintain their power, not through doctrine alone, but through architecture that humbles, music that transcends, ceremony that transforms. Your authority must create similar effects, must wrap itself in comparable. Glory must present itself with equal grandeur. The truly skilled leader uses ritual to create experiences that bypass the rational mind and speak directly to deeper human needs, the need for order, for meaning, for connection to something greater than ourselves. Your ceremonies must satisfy these hungers while binding them to your authority. Consider how every lasting power structure maintains itself, not through constant force, but through regular ceremonies that reinforce its rightness, through rituals that transform practical submission into spiritual or ideological fulfillment. In the lessons that follow, I will show you precisely how to create and maintain these systems, how to design your rituals, how to establish your traditions, how to wrap your authority in the cloak of higher purpose. But first, you must accept this truth. In the realm of power, ritual is not mere decoration. It is the foundation upon which lasting authority is built. Now we must examine the eternal truth about controlling the masses that Rome's emperors understood so well. A population entertained is a population controlled. But this is not merely about distraction. It is about the sophisticated art of managing public emotion through calculated provision of both pleasure and spectacle. Imagine yourself ruling over a restless population. Their grievances simmer, their discontent grows. This is when masters of power understand that the mob requires not just bread for their stomachs, but circus for their minds and blood for their darker appetites. All three must be provided in careful measure. Let me share what I witnessed in Rome's great arenas. The emperors knew that public spectacle served multiple purposes. It was not merely entertainment, it was demonstration of power, release of social tension, and reminder of authority, all crafted into a single overwhelming experience. Consider this truth that history proves repeatedly. A population focused on the next festival thinks less about rebellion. A crowd anticipating tomorrow's games pays less attention to today's injustices. But mere distraction is not enough. The entertainments you provide must reinforce your power, even as they seem to offer escape from it. You may think such manipulation beneath the dignity of leadership. But look deeper. When has any successful ruler not understood the necessity of managing public emotion through spectacle? When has any lasting power not provided its subjects with controlled outlets for their darker urges? The mathematics of mass control demonstrates this principle. Every grievance requires compensation. Every deprivation demands distraction. Every submission must be rewarded with spectacle. This is not cynicism. This is understanding of human nature. I have watched rulers destroy themselves through misunderstanding this tool. Some offered too little diversion, allowing public discontent to focus on real issues. Others provided too much spectacle, depleting their resources and making entertainment expected rather than appreciated. Let me be clear. The art I teach you is not simple distraction. It is the sophisticated manipulation of public emotion through carefully calculated provision of pleasure and catharsis. It is about understanding that the mob's appetites, properly managed, become tools of control. Think of it this way. Every successful system of power creates its own calendar of festivities, its own cycle of spectacles, its own rhythm of public experiences that make the people forget their chains while strengthening their bonds. Consider this deeper strategy. Your entertainments must seem to arise from generosity while serving authority. Let the people believe they are being indulged when they are being controlled. Let them think they are escaping power when they are submitting to it more deeply. The wise leader understands the bread you provide must be enough to prevent starvation, but not enough to encourage independence. The circus must be grand enough to amaze, but not so spectacular that it cannot be topped when needed. The blood must flow enough to satisfy dark appetites without unleashing them fully. Here is wisdom earned through observation. The most effective spectacles combine multiple elements: fear and joy, violence and mercy, danger and safety. Let your people experience the full range of emotion while never forgetting who provides and controls these experiences. You must grasp this essential principle. The management of public entertainment is not separate from the exercise of power. It is one of its most crucial expressions. Every festival you provide, every spectacle you create, must reinforce your authority even while seeming to offer escape from it. Remember, Those who fail to provide bread risk rebellion, those who neglect circus risk awareness, and those who deny blood risk its expression in uncontrolled ways. The skilled ruler provides all three in careful measure. Consider the most successful crowd control systems in history. They created entire calendars of public experience, entire cycles of festival and spectacle that gave people something to anticipate, something to remember, something to fear missing. Let me share a principle I've seen proven repeatedly. The best entertainments are those that make the audience feel both privileged and grateful. Let them believe they are receiving special favors. Let them fear the loss of your generosity more. Then they resent their dependence on it. You must understand. This is not merely about keeping people distracted. It is about creating experiences that bind them more tightly to your authority, even as they seem to celebrate their freedom. It is about making dependency feel like privilege. In the lessons that follow, I will show you precisely how to design these systems, how to balance bread, circus, and blood, how to create spectacles that serve power while seeming to offer escape from it. But first, you must accept this truth. In the realm of power, entertainment is not diversion. It is control. Now we arrive at perhaps the most crucial necessity in the maintenance of power, the systematic elimination of potential rivals. This is not about crude violence or obvious purges. It is about the sophisticated art of identifying, isolating, and neutralizing those who might challenge your authority before they gain the strength to do so. Imagine yourself securely in power, surrounded by those who smile and bow, who proclaim loyalty while harboring ambition. This is when masters of power understand that today's allies are tomorrow's rivals, that every capable subordinate is a potential threat, that talent itself can become a danger if not properly managed. Let me share what I witnessed in Florence's greatest houses. The most skilled rulers could identify future rivals before those rivals recognized their own potential. They understood that threat lies not in current power, but in future capability, not in present position, but in possible ambition. Consider this truth that history proves repeatedly. Every person of talent in your organization represents both an asset and a threat. Their capabilities strengthen your position today, but could challenge it tomorrow. This paradox must be managed with scientific precision. You may protest, arguing that you need talented people, that you cannot eliminate every potential rival. But look deeper. When has any lasting power not found ways to benefit from talent while preventing its growth into threat? When has any enduring authority not mastered this balance? The mathematics of rivalry demonstrates this principle. For every level of talent you allow to develop, you must create corresponding levels of dependency. For every capability you nurture, you must establish matching constraints. This is not paranoia. This is preparation. I have watched rulers destroy themselves through misunderstanding this necessity. Some eliminated too many capable people, weakening their own organization. Others allowed rivals to grow unchecked, trusting in loyalty until loyalty transformed into ambition. Let me be clear. The art I teach you is not about creating a desert of mediocrity around you. It is about maintaining precisely the level of talent needed while ensuring that talent remains firmly under control. It is about using capability without being endangered by it. Think of it this way. Every person who could replace you will eventually think of replacing you. This is not because they are evil, it is because they are human. The wise leader accepts this reality and plans accordingly. Consider this deeper strategy. Your potential rivals must be identified early before they recognize themselves as threats. Watch for signs of unusual capability, of natural leadership, of too quick advancement. These are not qualities to celebrate, but dangers to manage. The skilled leader understands the elimination of rivals need not mean their death or exile. Often it means careful limitation of their growth, strategic distribution of their power, subtle containment of their influence. Let them serve, but never let them threaten. Here is wisdom earned through observation. The most dangerous rivals are not those who openly oppose you, but those who excel at serving you. Their very competence makes them credible alternatives. Their proven capability makes them plausible replacements. You must grasp this essential principle. No position of power is ever truly secure while there exist others capable of filling it. Your task is not to prevent all capability, but to ensure that no single person or group combines all the capabilities needed to replace you. Remember, those who fail to eliminate rivals often become examples in the history of power. Cautionary. Tales of how swiftly authority can be lost to those whose growth was not properly contained. Consider the most successful systems of power in history. They created structures where talent could serve but never accumulate too much influence, where capability could benefit the organization while remaining safely fragmented and controlled. Let me share a principle I've seen proven repeatedly. The best elimination of rivals happens before they become rivals. Identify potential threats early. Create systems that naturally limit their growth. Establish boundaries that appear as opportunities. You must understand. This is not about destroying every person of talent. It is about ensuring that talent serves your purposes rather than threatening your position. It is about maintaining exactly the level of capability you need while preventing the emergence of capability you fear. Think of how nature itself maintains order. No tree in a forest allows another to grow too close, too tall, too strong. Your organization must function the same way, allowing growth but maintaining crucial distances, permitting strength but controlling its distribution. The truly skilled leader uses multiple techniques to manage potential rivals. Strategic promotion to positions that limit further growth, careful division of responsibilities to prevent accumulation of too much power, creation of competing centers of influence to prevent any single threat from emerging, selective reward and punishment to demonstrate both the benefits of loyalty and the costs of ambition. Consider how every successful power structure maintains itself, not through complete elimination of talent, but through careful management of its growth and distribution. Not through obvious suppression, but through sophisticated control of opportunity and advancement. In the lessons that follow, I will show you precisely how to create these systems, how to identify potential rivals early, how to manage their growth, how to benefit from their capabilities while preventing them from becoming threats. But first, you must accept this truth. In the realm of power, the management of rivals is not an occasional necessity. It is a constant requirement. Now we must confront a truth that history repeatedly demonstrates. True legacy is built not on love, but on fear, not the crude terror of the moment, but the deep, lasting fear that shapes generations, that outlives its creator, that maintains order long after direct power has passed. Imagine yourself contemplating your legacy. Will you be remembered as one who was loved, whose memory fades with those who loved you? Or will you create the kind of fear that fathers teach their sons, that becomes woven into the very fabric of society, that maintains its power through story and legend? Let me share what I observed studying the greatest rulers of history. Those remembered with love are forgotten when those who loved them pass. But those who crafted legacies of fear live on in cautionary tales, in whispered warnings, in the various way people think about power and consequence. Consider this truth that time has proven. Love dies with the lover, but fear passes from generation to generation. The skilled ruler understands that to truly shape the future, one must create the kind of fear that becomes tradition, that transforms into cultural memory, that teaches lasting lessons. You may resist this idea, believing that a legacy of love would be nobler. But look deeper. When has any lasting impact on history been achieved through gentleness alone? When has any enduring change not been backed by the kind of fear that makes people remember? The mathematics of legacy demonstrates this principle. every act of memorable mercy must be built on a foundation of remembered strength. Every gesture of generosity must be framed by demonstrations of power. This is not cruelty, this is understanding of human memory. I have watched rulers destroy their own legacies through misunderstanding this truth. Some tried to be remembered for kindness, only to have their achievements erased by the first crisis after their passing. Others created crude terror that inspired not fear, but hatred, ensuring their works would be undone by revenge. Let me be clear. The fear I speak of is not the fear of the tyrant which dies with him. It is the deep fear of consequences, of natural law, of inevitable result. It is the kind of fear that makes people say, "This is how things must be," rather than, "This is what he made us do." Think of it this way. Every lasting system of order is built on fear that has become so natural, it no longer feels like fear. Your legacy must achieve this transformation from personal power to natural law, from imposed terror to accepted truth. Consider this deeper strategy. Your fear must outlive your direct control. It must become part of how people think, how they teach their children, how they understand the world. It must transform from your personal power into impersonal truth. The wise leader understands. Legacy through fear requires subtle sophistication. It is not about being remembered as fearsome. It is about creating fear that becomes separated from your person, that attaches itself to principles and consequences, rather than to you. Here is wisdom earned through observation. The most effective legacy of fear is one that people internalize so deeply they forget it began as fear. Let them believe they choose order because it is right, not because they fear disorder. Let them think they obey principles, not power. You must grasp this essential principle. Creating a lasting legacy means crafting fear that becomes self-sustaining, that regenerates itself through social transmission, that maintains its power through story and symbol rather than through direct force. Remember, those who seek to be remembered with love are forgotten when love fades. Those who create lasting fear become part of how people understand reality itself. Consider the most successful legacies in history. They created systems where fear became so fundamental it was no longer recognized as fear. It became tradition, culture, common sense, the way things are and must be. Let me share a principle I've seen proven repeatedly. The best legacy of fear is one that makes people fear consequences rather than individuals, principles rather than persons, natural laws rather than human power. You must understand, this is not about being remembered as a monster. It is about creating the kind of fear that civilizes, that maintains order, that prevents the chaos that would destroy everything you have built. In the lessons that follow, I will show you precisely how to craft this legacy, how to create fear that outlasts you, that serves rather than destroys, that builds rather than breaks. But first, you must accept this truth. In the realm of power, true legacy is built on fear that has become truth. Now we must examine the fatal errors that destroy even the most promising rulers, the mistakes that transform necessary cruelty into self-destruction, that turn calculated ruthlessness into the seeds of downfall. For in the delicate art of power, how you wield force matters as much as when you choose to use it. Imagine yourself firmly established in power, your initial decisive actions having secured your position. This is precisely when the most dangerous mistakes occur. This is when rulers forget that ruthlessness is a precision instrument, not a blanket solution. This is when power begins to poison itself. Let me share what I witnessed in the courts of those who fell. They began with calculated cruelty, with necessary force, with purposeful ruthlessness. But something changed. The tool became the master. The medicine became the poison. They forgot that cruelty must serve purpose, not pleasure. Consider this truth that history proves repeatedly. Those who master the careful application of force often fall victim to their own success. Having seen how effectively cruelty works, they begin to use it reflexively rather than strategically. This is the beginning of their end. You may think yourself immune to such transformation, but look deeper. When has any ruler who began with purposeful ruthlessness not faced the temptation to use it more freely? When has success with force not bred dangerous confidence in its universal application? The mathematics of decline demonstrates this principle. Every unnecessary act of cruelty multiplies your enemies exponentially. Every gratuitous display of force weakens rather than strengthens your position. This is not morality. This is practical reality. I have watched rulers destroy themselves through these very mistakes. Some became addicted to the exercise of power, forgetting that its value lies in its careful application. Others lost the ability to distinguish between necessary and gratuitous force, between strategic cruelty and mere vindictiveness. Let me be clear. The errors I speak of are not simply moral failings. They are strategic disasters. They transform effective tools of power into instruments of self-destruction. They convert useful fear into dangerous hatred. They replace calculated control with unstable terror. Think of it this way. A surgeon who begins to enjoy the cutting soon loses the precision that makes surgery effective. A ruler who begins to relish cruelty soon loses the judgment that makes it useful. Consider these critical errors that I have seen destroy the most promising rulers. First, the mistake of constancy, using cruelty as a constant state rather than a careful punctuation. Effective force is like strong spice. It must be used sparingly to maintain its impact. Second, the error of escalation, believing that if some force worked, more force will work better. This is like trying to increase the effectiveness of medicine by doubling the dose. It transforms cure into poison. Third, the fatal flaw of personalization, allowing cruelty to become an expression of personal emotion rather than calculated necessity. Power exercised in anger creates enemies. Power exercised in calculation creates compliance. Fourth, the mistake of visibility, conducting brutal business in public when it should be private, or hiding necessary examples that should be seen. Each act of force must be carefully staged for its intended effect. Fifth, the error of timing, using force when subtlety would serve better, or showing mercy when strength is required. The art lies not just in what you do, but when you choose to do it. The wise leader understands. Power is most effective when it is most carefully controlled. Every act of force should be like a word in a carefully crafted speech, chosen for its precise effect measured in its application, timed for maximum impact. Here is wisdom earned through observation. The most dangerous moment for any ruler comes not in the struggle for power, but in its comfortable possession. This is when judgment fails, when calculation gives way to impulse, when strategy surrenders to emotion. You must grasp this essential principle. Ruthlessness is not a character trait to be cultivated, but a tool to be carefully employed. The moment it becomes your nature rather than your strategy, you have already begun your descent. Remember, those who fall to these errors often realize their mistakes too late. By the time they recognize their growing isolation, their multiplying enemies, their weakening position, the momentum of their decline has become irreversible. Consider the pattern of decline in history's fallen rulers. They begin with purposeful force, achieve success through calculated cruelty, then gradually lose the discipline that made their early actions effective. Their power becomes their weakness. Their strength becomes their vulnerability. Let me share a principle I've seen proven repeatedly. The most dangerous enemy of effective ruthlessness is its own success. Victory breeds confidence. Confidence breeds carelessness. Carelessness breeds disaster. You must understand, this is not about becoming less ruthless. It is about maintaining the precision, purpose, and calculation that makes ruthlessness effective. It is about preserving the cool judgment that transforms force from crude violence into sophisticated tool. In the lessons that follow, I will show you exactly how to avoid these fatal errors, how to maintain the discipline that makes power effective, how to preserve the judgment that makes force useful. But first, you must accept this truth. In the realm of power, the greatest threat to ruthlessness is not resistance, but success. And so we arrive at our final truth, the culmination of all we have explored about power, cruelty, and the delicate art of ruling. Let these last words serve not just as conclusion, but as covenant between those who seek power and the darker wisdom required to maintain it. Remember what I showed you about fear, how it must be cultivated like a precious herb, neither overused nor neglected. Recall the mathematics of cruelty, how it must be swift, decisive, and rare enough to maintain its impact. Consider again the architecture of power, how every piece must serve purpose rather than impulse. Let me gather for you the essentially principles that we have explored. First, understanding that human nature does not change. Men will always be ungrateful, deceitful, and cowardly unless necessity makes them otherwise. Build your systems on this foundation, not on wishes of what humanity might be. Second, recognizing that fear outlasts love. Those who wish to create lasting impact must work with the tools that endure. Fear, properly cultivated, passes through generations. Love dies with the lover. Third, accepting that cruelty, when necessary, must be decisive. Half measures in force create ongoing bleeding. Better a swift severity than a lingering weakness. Fourth, knowing that timing transforms the nature of actions. The same deed that strengthens you today may destroy you tomorrow. Power lies not just in what you do, but when you choose to do it. Fifth, understanding that every system requires its pressure valves, designated receivers of blame, calculated outlets for public anger, controlled releases of social tension. These are not optional, but necessary. Sixth, recognizing that power must be clothed in legitimacy. Raw force diminishes with use, but authority wrapped in ritual and tradition compounds its own strength. Seventh, accepting that rivals must be managed before they become threats. The art lies not in destroying all capability, but in ensuring it remains safely fragmented and controlled. But beyond these principles, grasp this deeper truth. Power is not merely a position to be achieved, but an art to be mastered. Like any art, it requires understanding of its materials, human nature, fear, necessity. Like any craft, it demands respect for its tools, cruelty, mercy, force, ritual. I have shown you the mechanics of power, how fear is maintained, how cruelty is calibrated, how authority is clothed in legitimacy. But remember, these are not merely techniques to be employed, but wisdom to be embodied. The true master of power becomes the principles they employ. Think now of all we have explored: the careful cultivation of fear, the precise application of force, the sophisticated manipulation of perception. Understand that these are not separate tools but parts of a single art. The skilled ruler orchestrates them as a composer orchestrates instruments, creating a symphony of power. Yet I must leave you with this final warning. The principles I have taught you are like fire, essential for survival but dangerous to the careless. Used with precision, they create and maintain order. Used crudely, they consume their wielder first. Remember always, cruelty is a tool, not a pleasure. Fear is an instrument, not an indulgence. Power is a responsibility, not a liberation. Those who forget these truths, who allow the tools to become their master, write their own endings in histories of fallen rulers. For those who truly understand what I have taught, who grasp not just the mechanics, but the philosophy of power, a different future awaits. They become not just rulers, but architects of order, not just leaders, but shapers of reality. This, then, is your choice. Will you be one who merely holds power, or one who truly understands it? Will you be one who uses these tools, or one who Masters them? Will you be one who rules through position or one who governs through understanding? The wisdom I have shared with you comes not from books or theories, but from centuries of observation, from watching power flow through history like water, finding its own level, following its own laws. These principles are not moral teachings, but natural laws, as immutable as gravity, as reliable as seasons. Let this be your code: to understand power deeply enough to use it rarely, to grasp cruelty thoroughly enough to employ it precisely, to comprehend fear completely enough to cultivate it carefully. For those who seek power without understanding its nature, I offer this final truth: the throne alone does not make a ruler. Position alone does not grant mastery. True power lies not in the strength you command, but in the wisdom with which you employ it. Remember, for those who dare to lead, who dare to rule, who dare to shape the world rather than be shaped by it, these teachings are not optional but essential. They are not guidelines but laws, not suggestions but requirements. The choice now lies with you. The wisdom has been shared. The principles have been revealed. Will you master them, or will they master you? Will you rise to the true art of power, or remain merely its servant? For those who understand, no further words are needed. For those who do not, no further words will help. The art of power awaits its true students. The question is, are you among them?